Megan's new to Department of Ag. We just opened up her position a few months ago. We're really excited to get her. I think everybody wanted her to get the job because if you work in weeds in Montana, you know she's super passionate about weeds, great educator. And so I wanted to take this chance on the EDRR webinar to share with you guys updates on some of these tough species, and then let Megan share with you about her new program and how she can help you. So here we go. The first species is the big Montana success story, dyer's woad. Thanks especially to Amber Birch, but the people preceding her in this this species and Working Dogs for Conservation has also been a big part of this. I always get excited to work with them, and they're fun to work with and they're super effective. This yellow lab here is Tobias, and he's a middle-aged dog, but he just works hard. He searches this area here is near big timber, and he searches through all that chest high sagebrush and finds these little tiny rosettes that we would never find without him. And he's a huge reason, our Working Dogs is a huge reason for the success of the program. And they're just a pleasure to work with. All right, so back at it. Here's Tobias getting rewarded by Niall Richards, who's also a great resource. And here's some of the rosettes that he found this year. You'll notice with Dyer's woad, it has a really distinct cream-colored midvein, and it has quite a taproot. So even those little tiny first-year rosettes, it's typically a biennial, have a healthy taproot, and we try to remove all of that for every single plant we find in the state. This to say what a success it is, we used to have thousands of plants at several different sites throughout the state. This year we had 140 total plants, only 3 plants seeding. It's just amazing. I just can't tout what Amber's done. I just, it's amazing. It's awesome. One way to distinguish this plant from other yellow mustards in Montana is it has very bright yellow flowers compared to almost leafy spurge colored compared to most of these tumble mustard or flickweed, and how it's kind of a pale yellow. Like all mustards, it has 4 petals. It's sometimes the leaves are more of a blue-green. They're slender, but they have a very rubbery feeling, kind of like cabbage, and have a relatively thick stem compared to the other mustards. And then you see they have the big clusters of flowers at the top of the plants. And then very unique is the seeds. They're teardrop shaped. They're not long siliques like a lot of mustards, or they're not like pennycress. And as they get older, they turn dark purplish black to brown. So if you see something like this, please let your county weed coordinator or Amber or I know, so we can continue to succeed on this one. Another 1A is phragmites. Montana has invasive phragmites subspecies australis, and then the native phragmites. So there are only 2 active sites in Montana now. Up between Havre and Chinook, there's it's between the Milk River and the High Line. There's several small patches, but those have been knocked back very well over the last few years, and now there's less than 0.2 of an acre. And then last year in Bozeman, we got a new report. So the Bozeman site was right near some houses and residential areas, trees, landscaping, a trail, and then some new businesses being put in. This is late summer, early fall, and you can see how green and large those are. You can see over here to the right, this one is at least twice as tall as those cattails. It's thick, you couldn't walk through it. It's got coppery colored heads, and the native at this point was totally senesced. Tan, the seed heads were tan, they're less dense. So this was a big deal to find this. We treated it with glyphosate that fall. We didn't use amazepyr because being the trees there in the houses. And this year, coming back there, you can see just super effective. Little bit of a few stems came back, and it was repeatedly checked this summer by Gallatin County. Um, we also had clipped all the seed heads. You could still see. I don't know. I'm going to put myself at about 6'2", and looks like that might be like 4 feet taller than me. So we clipped and bagged and incinerated those seed heads like we do with all these species, these high priority species. We pretty much don't let any reproductive parts exist, and we don't just burn them. We put them in legitimate incinerators. So that was good to see that. And then it was also good to see that the native plants were coming back this year. So that's cattail. The cattails are growing in, um, because we don't just want to kill weeds. We want healthy habitat, healthy working land. 1B is Scotch broom. Uh, I think this is one that could actually be a 1A. It's quite localized to uh, small, very, very small portion of Lincoln County, and then a little bit more on the west side of Sanders County, but there's just not much of it. It's a shrub. It's a legume. Um, I think we do have little enough that we could possibly reclassify it, which is always exciting to put it as a 1A, meaning it's very little in Montana. This was the Noxious Weed Advisory Council. Um, we set up to have them come out and pull a bunch of it this summer, and I happened to get sick, so I didn't have to go put in the hard work. You can see those two locations between Troy and Libby, and then the far western side of Sanders County. But you can also see on the map on the left that it's all over the west coast and Idaho, and this is desert areas through here. So it doesn't mean it's going to stay in the far western part of Montana, and we need to take that seriously that it could move on to other areas. Like I said, it's in the pea family. You can see these 3-leaf pea-like leaves that are real typical of the legumes. Um, the seeds look a lot like garden peas. Uh, they're very hairy. They start out green and then they get dark brown or black as they get older. They have a lot of hairs on the edges of the pods. Then the stems are actually have edges on them. They're kind of square or star shaped. You could distinctly feel that. The older stem toward the base of the plant is more round, but the green fresh stems are quite edged. This is also same area on Highway 200 on the Idaho border. Um, you can see me again on the left side. Like I said, I put myself at about 6'2", so those plants might be 10 feet tall. You can see why they call it broom. It has these kind of broom-shaped bunches of stems, very bright yellow pea-like flower. Uh, and then what I think this is a really cool plant. So one interesting thing is it loses its leaves as the weather gets hot, and it does photosynthesis through its stems. So it does about half of its photosynthesis through its stems. And we treated this aggressively last fall and with triclopyr late in the year, choline formulation, so Vaslan, and had really good success. And we've been repeatedly hitting it since. And then not all the plants are this big, obviously. There's a lot of little ones. Has a really long seed life, decades long. So when the ground gets stirred up, you get a lot more little plants, and um, it's a really good candidate for the drones and the multispectral imaging. Tansy ragwort is a 2A, so it's not quite as high priority, but I think this is another one that needs to move. This one needs to move higher on the list because we don't have a lot of it. I'm getting a question from Canada. Can we outline the habitat preferences on this one? This one loves logged areas. It's in open areas and forests. Um, and you can see this is in Lincoln County, and uh, I got a text that I'm saying 6'2" completely discredits anything that I might say in this webinar, so I'm actually about 5'8". But they like this logged area, and logging and cattle grazing really spreads it. And the timber companies up there have been really good about reducing um, the grazing in that area. But what I think is pretty cool about this picture is this was an old stump, and you can see how high they cut that, how deep the snow was, how big the trees were. Um, and these have like springboard notches in them. But if there's logging, it's going to spread if it's there. But this is very localized to mostly to Lincoln County, and then a little bit by the town of Lincoln in Lewis and Clark County. And both of those area are all those areas where it's at have historic logging. Um, and like I said, grazing doesn't help it either. It's a I think it's a fun one to treat, but it's pretty tough because you're out there in those thick woods and lots of stumps and um, yeah. But Lincoln County's spearheads these efforts statewide, and thanks to them, this is one that I think we could move up to possibly a 1B. You can see on this plant, I think it has, looking at it from a distance, I think when it's not flowering, it kind of has form like Canada thistle. Kind of reminds me of non-flowered Canada thistle. I only have 25 minutes, so I can't get too much into ID, even though I'd love to talk about it. When it's young, the rosettes, they're really ruffled, frilly looking. It's got it's in the aster family, so it has a really aster-like flower, usually 13 petals, has ray flowers and disc flowers, so they're actually florets. And then as the leaves get older, they get more deeply divided and smaller. Um, has kind of a stinky odor to it, and because it's usually in trees, we use a clopyralid on it generally. And you can see how we're getting ahead here. This is the Lewis and Clark County site. Um, all the green spots, which don't show up that well, those are sites from the previous 2 years. And then the red spots are this past summer. And you can see how we're spraying less and less spots. And that's really positive. I think we can get that site maybe knocked out in the next few years. Again, especially thanks to Lincoln County. And then you can see these skid trails through here. So this was a logged area, and you'll especially find it in the old slash piles. This is one I hope everyone knows about. After the last several years, we talked about it extensively because it is economically and damaging to Montana and hurting our habitat and hurting our bottom line. It's bent nata. It's continued to thrive across the state in various climates. So the picture on the left is in Bighorn County. No, that's Rosebud County. And this is in Lake County. So this is earlier in the year. This is a little later. It's thriving here, but as you can see, indaziflam works well still, and we know that. Um, but it also shows your skips. And then back here in the background, you can see indaziflam works on yellow sweet clover too. There's a lot of yellow sweet clover this year, especially in eastern Montana, and you can see there's none of it through here. But the good news on Bentonata is there's only 26 counties with it still. And in fact, we took Broadwater County off the list because nobody can prove that it was ever there. Um, this is a map that Jane Mangold keeps. She's the annual invasive grass master of Montana. I think we all know that, and we can thank her for that. So if anyone knows of Ventonata in any of these other 30 counties, please tell her or tell me, and we can verify that and add it to the list and help to manage it. Medusa head is a priority 1A, so uh, it's much more rare than Ventonata, but we don't have as much trouble with it in Montana so far. There's a little bit over an acre, and there's a little bit over an acre in near Libby on this site here that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, but there's not that many plants of it there. It's closely managed, spraying it with indaziflam, pulling every plant, bagging, incinerating. You can see when the indaziflam's starting to wear off because that common mullen's popping back up. So we had several colleagues from Canada come down this past summer and to see rush skeleton weed and Medusa head and bentonata, and this is some of them, and it was has these crazy awns on it, which is where it gets the name Medusa head. And you can, I think it's pretty cool on this one. You can see it's just starting to dry out and twist. And then all these green ones back here, they're straight. But we have that in, so we have that 1 acre in near Libby, and then on CSKT, there's a few hundred acres that are being closely managed. And then there's a concern that it's coming up from Wyoming east of I-90. So that's something summer 2025 I would like to look a lot deeper into if anyone wants to volunteer to do it with me. The um, Idaho or Montana Wyoming border. So we showed Canada our weeds, and since they're not the threat they once used to be, I went up there. I had a little bit of trepidation that they might not understand my English, but everything went smooth. Um, we did. They have blueweed like Montana is never wants to get. It's we have a lot more things like knapweed than they do, but they had a lot of blueweed. So all these stems right here, all the grayish stems, that's all blueweed, smaller than what you'll see in Montana. And then this is all rosettes. So they kind of showed us what we don't want to become and why we need to prioritize it. Um, in Montana, blueweed's mostly localized to Ravalli counties and Sanders County. Sanders County is definitely the worst in the state. Ravalli's been working on it hard for years, and it does take years to manage it once you have it. Unfortunately, it's one you really have to keep after. Sanders County has a new weed coordinator, Rory Nygaard. He's really picked things up and things are looking positive there. So don't want to throw him under the bus about the blueweed because he is doing good things, but it is hard to see a high priority weed right on the roadside like that. It's got really those distinct blue to purple flowers, sometimes white to pink, but it's in the borage family, like hound's tongue. So it's a 5 fused lobes on the flower. Um, it's got spots on the stem that's very distinct, then fiberglass like hairs, and the rosettes are very bumpy and rough, like super rough grit sandpaper. You can feel them and you'll know that's what you got. Uh, but it's also sporadically throughout some of these other western counties, and um, unfortunately, I think it's starting. We're finding some isolated populations further east, so keep your eyes out. If you have it, we will help you fix it. Oh, great. I can't get my clicker off the screen. How about that? Uh, here comes Greta to my rescue, but I figured out to use the buttons. Um, so common buckthorn is one I'm pretty passionate about, pretty interested in. It's widespread across the state, but it's not typically abundant across the state. But I do think if you look at historic town sites with old homes and then that have riparian areas nearby, I think you could find it. I'm pretty confident I can find it in almost any old town site in Montana. If I really looked, I've uh, Townsend I tried and failed, but otherwise I almost always can find it, especially in the off season because it keeps its leaves later than Montana natives. Um, I just think this is like the most overlooked um, weed in Montana. It's a small tree to a large shrub, but we have a woody invasive working group going on now, and ISAN is doing lots of work on that, and we're trying to secure grants and make a management plan. And hopefully, we're looking better in the future because this is one of my pet weeds. It's also one of Megan's big pets, so she might mention it in her presentation next. She's done big things with it in the state, and she's going to expand. She's got a program called Buckthorn Bandits that specifically attacks it, and I'm 100% behind it. You can see this is a hedge of just straight common buckthorn here in Helena, right by our office. Um, you can see why when it gets into wildlands and riparian areas, why it just overtakes things. It gets impenetrable thickets. Oops. It's pretty easy to identify once you key into it. You can see how it gets the name buckthorn because of the terminal buds right next to each other, kind of look like a deer hoof. And then the thorn part, it has a thorn that comes out of the middle of that. And then it has sub-opposite leaf arrangement, which is pretty unique. So it means they're just slightly, not directly across from each other, just slightly staggered. And you can see that here too. And then they have really distinct, the vein pattern where they have just a few pairs of veins and they curve, and then just slightly toothed. So if you're interested in buckthorn, I'm interested in buckthorn, and I will gladly help you. Knotweed, I think, is kind of in the same boat as buckthorn. Nobody's doing a lot with it, and I also think it's one you can find anywhere there's old houses. But it's unlike buckthorn. I don't feel that it's naturalized itself as much. But that's me again, all 5'8" of me, but it's still towering over me. And I sprayed that with triclopyr that we were spraying Scotch broom with, and it didn't do anything to it. But I have successfully killed it at my own old house in Great Falls. I injected the stems with glyphosate, and it knocked it out. Rush skeletonweed is my number one pet in Montana. It's the weed I think about most, and I worry about most. We've got 4 task forces for it. This one likes degraded rangeland a lot. It doesn't get into thick forests, but it will be in mountainsides and mixed in logged and burnt areas, roadsides. If there's cheatgrass and mustards and rough land, south-facing slopes, it's a good place you might find it. We have the 4 task forces, and then Missoula counties going to apply for a task force this year. Those are just grant-funded, Montana Department of Agriculture, Noxious Weed Trust Fund grant-funded teams that specifically only attack these weeds. And Lincoln County's been doing this forever, and they're keeping it in check. Sanders County got a little behind for a couple years, but the new coordinator found a great task force coordinator, and they're finding a lot more, but that's because they're looking a lot harder and they're treating more. Flathead just has a very tiny bit. Lake has a lot, but they also hired an awesome task force coordinator. And then Ravalli has just a heck of a contractor that's willing to put in all the hard work to find and treat this stuff because it is on rough ground and you have to clip and bag it, and it's not fun. So we found some last year in Lewis and Clark County. We found 2 sites, one small site in East Helena and then about an acre west of Helena. The East Helena site didn't come back. The site west of Helena, the actual original patch didn't come back, but plants came back outside of that original patch. So it's continuing to be treated, monitored. We'll get here to mineral Missoula here in a second. So Idaho has 4 million acres of rush skeletonweed. Even with what I just showed you with all those counties, we're still like at 1/1000th of that. We probably have less than 4,000 acres of it, but it's moving into Mineral County and Missoula County and maybe Granite County on the interstate. That's quite concerning. We don't want this to get into wheat. So we're really counting on Missoula County to step up and cover that area for us this year. We throw everything we have at it. Drones. This is in Lake County. Drones have proved to be super effective on it. They can find it easier than we can. It's hard to see. It has the name skeletonweed because it really doesn't have any leaves on the stems, tiny flowers. So the drones find it easier, especially late in the year, and it also photosynthesizes through the stems. So late in the year, it can find it, does better than the human eye, and better coverage with herbicide and less herbicide in the long run when it's just finding and treating instead of just broadcasting everything. CSKT got multiple drones this year, so I think a lot of people are going to be moving that way. I'm going to be working on a management plan for rush skeletonweed this winter. There's many of you who I'm going to be asking for help on that, and if you'd like to be part of that, reach out to me. Palmer amaranth, this is the biggest concern on the crop side in Montana. We found one plant, Amanda Williams, Carter County Extension agent, great plant person, found this on the side of the road. It's a single male plant. If you see a pigweed with male and female plants, um, and long seed heads and long leaf stems, if you just see something that looks out of place at a pigweed, let us know. Let your extension agent know. Um, let Tim Seipel know. Let me know. We'll try to figure out what it is because we're winning this battle too. Knock on wood. Um, it's only the third time we've found Palmer amaranth in Montana, and uh, we've never allowed it to reproduce. Water hemp, we have not found any in the last couple of years. We're still good there. Garden loosestrife. This is not listed, but it's very problematic in Washington. Two sites came to our attention about a year ago. Kalispell and Hamilton. The Hamilton site is increasing, even though I treated it. I treated that with triclopyr. Well, I treated both with triclopyr, and the Kalispell site is decreasing. So not sure why one's doing better and one's doing worse. But the Kalispell site is less plants, less vigor, smaller plants, less flowering. It's good news. We're going to keep trying. It's not actually in the loosestrife family. It's got round stems. They're hairy and fuzzy, as you can see. Completely different flowers. Very rhizomatous. So this is a patch up in Kalispell. I don't think you'll ever see purple loosestrife this dense in Montana. Purple loosestrife, we found a good patch in Lake County this year and a good patch in Sweetgrass County, but otherwise it's kind of sporadic on the Missouri and Cascade County. In Lake County some. It's not a huge problem in Montana. Hopefully we keep it that way. See, it's got those large magenta spikes and it has square stems, and it truly is in the loosestrife family, but it's not a mint. So when you're down in the riparian areas looking for it, sometimes mints look similar. Doesn't have that mint smell. Then garlic mustard. This is in Helena. It's certainly increasing in Montana, increasing in the Helena area. It's a big problem farther east of us. I don't know if it's going to become a problem here. This is in yards in Helena. You can see when it's young, it's got the more rounded or kidney-shaped leaves, heart-shaped leaves. As it bolts, also in Helena, it gets the more triangular shaped leaves, and the lobes get much more pointed. And like any mustard, it has 4 petals. It has a really strong garlic odor if you crush it, so you can usually tell. But this is very problematic in other states, and you just wonder what we need to do in Montana. And here it is again, and it's mixed in with common buckthorn. So these are 2 that I think about, and what do we need to do? And if you have input on that and you'd like to talk with me about what we should do, or if you want to get on a committee about listing or anything like that, we can certainly work on it. White Bryony, this is just a random one that's listed in Idaho, and I'd heard it was in Bozeman before I'd seen it in Livingston. Well, this year we had the MWCA coordinators training in Dillon, ended up finding a lot of it. It's a pretty interesting plant because you can just see that stem behind me against that tree, the green leaves at the bottom. Those are about 3 feet long and one single strand of a vine, and it had a root that big. So this is another one. I don't want to be the person that, 40 years down the road, it was my fault that we didn't catch this stuff. So let's work together and think about these things. There's my contact. Sorry that was quick. As always, I failed with technology, and there's way more that I'd like to say about plants and just don't have the time. So call me anytime, email me, text me. We can talk more about this. And I've got a quick question here on garlic mustard. Is it mainly sticking to forest and tree understory in the margins of tree areas? No, it is mostly sticking into the yards underneath trees, natural areas underneath trees. There's some along some streams in Helena. It is in the trees, and it seems to really like it here. So I got some reports in Whitefish and Glacier National Park this year I didn't have a chance to check out. Got a new report in Victor that was checked. Missoula's getting some reports, so something we need to figure out. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Megan.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to start with my video on to make myself a little more familiar. I see some new names out there. My name is Megan Hoyer. I'm the Invasive Species Education Coordinator for the Montana Department of Agriculture. I have a strong background in education, noxious weed management, and I have a slew of education resources regarding noxious weeds. I have and I am looking for an increase in partnership for invasive species management and education opportunities. Montana Invasive Species Education Program focuses to coordinate and support invasive species education efforts across Montana and provide residents and visitors ways to prevent and manage invasive species. So thank you for joining us today. I appreciate Josh inviting me to present at this EDR Fall 2024 webinar. Josh and I have a strong relationship that I value. His work and his passion for managing and organizing efforts and education on EDRR species is crucial to our state. Early detection and rapid response species are not yet present, but have a limited distribution in Montana. It makes it critical to address because the potential for establishment and spread is high if we don't take action. Learning from Josh and the EDRR program, I have found that these weeds have made the list because they have significant ecological and economic impact. They easily destroy habitats and they alter ecosystem function, as well as threaten industries like agriculture, livestock, recreation, and it can even affect our tourism. High invasive characteristics also make them have the list. As Joss mentioned, they are aggressive growers and prolific seed producers. Luckily for us, we have a program like the EDRR that makes it a regulatory focus. Thank goodness we prohibit these plants in Montana. We can't sell them, we can't import them, and we can't plant these species. There's also a positive note is there is an opportunity for prevention because they're not widespread. They're not really established yet. The early detection, rapid response, and not letting them come in the first place is way more cost effective. I believe that the MESEP, Montana Invasive Species Program, can help focus the education efforts on identification, unified mapping, and sharing success and unsuccessful eradication experiences will be crucial because let's face it, it's great to learn both sides of the job at hand. But most importantly, what I've learned working with Josh and these EDRR species is that it's important for us all to work together. We've all got to be vigilant. And if we could all do our part and start reporting these infestations and talking with Josh, I think it would be great for our state.
Megan,
Yes.
we don't see your screen.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, I just had a picture of all of the EDRR species. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry. So that was what I was talking about. All of these species, prolific seed producers, root systems, they're not really present in Montana. And if we can get a grip on them early, it's a lot more cost effective. And I think that one way we can do that is through education. So the Montana Department of Ag's MESEP program and the MDA's EDRR program are strong partnerships. How I think the MESEP program can help the EDR program and other programs in efforts for invasive species education is helping to increase public awareness. Some of the things we have in store are assisting with workshops, trainings, and creating educational materials. This idea of building a network of citizen scientists and getting everybody to report in the same area so we can start accumulating this information and knowing where current infestations are, and once again, finding out how people are treating and managing those species. Josh does have some very strong partnerships, but as he just invited us all. If we all have input and we all need to work together, the more the merrier. I'd like to continue to help Josh and provide education, sharing guidance, prevention techniques such as, cleaning equipment, helping promote Adopt a Trailhead, using certified weed-free materials, and help people stop planting invasive species seeds or transporting them. Overall, just kind of start helping him facilitate communication. So, as you said, if you need assistance or you have an EDRR species, please contact Josh or a member of our team. The Montana Invasive Species Education Program stemmed from the previous noxious weed education campaign, but as a decision was made for the department to house it, overall invasive species education was a need, but there is still an incredibly strong focus for noxious weeds. And I just kind of wanted to share this slide with you, how grateful I am to have these resources working with the Montana Department of Ag. Just to call out Jasmine Chafee, our noxious weed coordinator for the state. She's got the eye for vetnata, and she's a cornucopia of knowledge. Working with Greta, she is a great resource for mapping as well as funding. And working with Josh on being up to date on these species, being up to management, and just overall brainstorming ideas that we can help the general public and government agencies take care of some of these weeds. It's also awesome. We are having another Ag Corps round of students or members. They are going to help us work with these EDRR. They're going to be helping us map, and they're going to be helping us go out into communities and educate. So thankful for all the different programs that the Department of Ag has involving invasive species education. So far this year, it has been very busy with the All-Taxa. I'm also a executive member for the Central Eastern Montana Invasive Species Team, CMIST. Being a part of this and continuing these partnerships have really opened the door for the aquatic invasive species part of it. I really enjoy what FWP, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has done with their citizen science for reporting and going out and looking for invasive species as well as management. CMIST has also opened the door. Montana has the eastern heath snail. It's a snail that loves vegetation. It crawls up in those hot summer months to cool off, and they mass on top of each other. That's the only way I can tell the difference between the native Rocky Mountain snail versus the heath snail. But CMS has been a great resource for educational outreach, as well as getting into our conservation districts and promoting invasive education. Other than that, the focus really has been noxious weeds. I've had the pleasure of working dogs for conservation. In the bottom left there's Ace. She's trained for salt cedar. Salt cedar, much like dyer's woad, is very hard to see. I call them squigglies when they first come up. Helping to assist and train with such a program that has impact has been a great experience. And then, as always, working with the Montana Weed Control Association, they have a lot of great resources. And still, Dan Wilkes, pull your share. With all of these travels and everything going on, I've realized that invasive species education isn't just a problem for Montana, but for our surrounding states and for Canada as well. It's been great talking with these people on, kind of their programs and their know-how and sharing what we do, and continuing to form these partnerships so that we know what's coming in and we're not always having to recreate everything from start. As Josh mentioned, I am really into buckthorn, and I am very passionate about the buckthorn bandits here at Yellowstone County in Two Moon Park, the Friends of Two Moon Park. Let's see if this video will play for us as I talk. This year I was able to continue working with Anthony, the extension office agent here in Yellowstone County, as well as Caleb Music, the Yellowstone County Weed District Spray Crew Foreman and Education Specialist. We had over think it was over 60 volunteers, maybe 80 native plant species were planted. We planted shrubs, trees, grasses. We cleaned up trash, and we installed another boot brush station at the entrance to our park. It's really exciting because this project is kind of blowing up, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback from the community as well as other organizations around the state. And I'm really excited that there's other communities who are wanting to start their own buckthorn bandit group. And all of these groups have included wanting to identify, remove, and revegetate, which all three are very strong components to this program. So if you've got buckthorn or you're wanting to get some community involvement in your area, please reach out. And this slide just kind of shows more of the Two Moon Park project in case my video did not play. A lot of the last few months, I have worked on a strategic plan and what direction and what kind of overall message we should be sharing with each other and with land users of Montana. And so far above here, you can read the purpose, vision, and mission, but I wanted to share that these are very strong values that I have for this program. And right now we are in the collaboration, transparency, and community engagement piece. So if any of you would like to come in and participate and you have any feedback, I am all ears. So there's 3 goals I'm specifically kind of working on at this time: education and outreach. There are several goals within that, but I feel like this was the broadest to share with you today. And there's 3 different strategies: identifying focal points, organizing Montana Department of Ag resources, and organizing partner materials. There is a lot of really cool resources that are out there in Montana, and one hopes that I have for this program is I can bring them all together and they're easily shareable. I know some of you guys are members of the Montana Weed Control Association, and they have a very useful field guide that is a hard copy. It's color coded, very user friendly. But in my search for looking at different organizing information from partner materials, MSU has a flip book. Greta, can you see this on the screen?
Yes.
Cool. So I just kind of wanted to share this resource today. It's much like the Montana Weed Control Associations. I'm linking a lot of lessons to this. It's easy, accessible. It can be downloaded on your phone. And I just kind of wanted to share the MSU flipbook with you guys today. So amongst working on all those goals in education, I haven't stopped going out and teaching. Since June 24th, that's the date I was hired, I spent 56 hours providing invasive species education to almost 3,000 people. The more I experience and the more I get out there, the more there's a need for invasive species education and outreach. So this is pretty exciting news. My friend Pam Schwend and I, she's the Carbon County Assistant Weed Coordinator. She and I have created lessons the last 5 years, and we are applying them and working with the Montana Office of Public Instruction, as well as Alliance for Curriculum Enhancement. They're a private organization that works with the Montana Office of Public Instruction to work on the curriculum and develop curriculum goals as well as professional development. Pam and I will be working on February 2nd. It's a Tuesday from 12 to 3:30 at the Lockwood School. We will be housing our first round of teachers, and these lessons will be accessible and written with state standards so that teachers can use them easily. These lessons will also be put on the Department of Ag website and will be accessible for anybody to use them. The thing I like about the format that we've created, it shows the title, it's got your standards, it's got your objectives, but all of the activities I've been working on are built within the document, so you don't actually need extra materials to work around with. So if you're interested in education or you've got some awesome lessons that you would like to share and share with teachers so that they can start using them in their classroom, the idea for going with teachers kind of reflects off of the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Train the Trainer program. The idea is that if we can train these teachers to be teaching these lessons, then we are sharing them with that much more. The Montana Invasive Species Education Program has also partnered with the Indian Education for All organization, and we are implementing some of these lessons to meet their needs as well as invasive species awareness. So that's exciting that we're seeing some of this stuff going into our state schools. The last goal I've been working on is the branding, messaging, and communication. See. I'm hoping to increase program effectiveness through the branding, impact recognition, and coordinated approach to external communications. There's kind of two options on the table we're thinking about going with, either no invasives or invasive smart. Kind of having something that's a positive message and that's an action that people can go out and do. We've had several meetings with some stakeholders, including like Montana Invasive Species Council, Invasive Species Action Network, the Montana Weed Control Association members have kind of been putting in our input. I asked if you guys have any input or suggestions. I am all ears. I will say that due to my background in noxious weeds and the fact that invasive plants pose a severe threat to native ecosystems, agriculture, recreation, tourism, all sorts of things here in Montana, a big focus to start is going to be knowing invasive plants and knowing or invasive plants smart. Not sure where we're going yet. The rest of the knows or the rest of the get smarts. I'm going to be featuring and promoting existing campaigns and education efforts that are out there. So if you guys have a strong campaign or you know of a strong message that you feel should be shared, please let me know and I will coordinate and get that kind of worked out. And I think the everlasting goal is always going to be the funding and development. We have $5,000 from the previous campaign, Noxious Weed Education campaign. As I mentioned, that's where this position stemmed from. We have initial funding that is gracious from MDT, DNRC, U.S. Forest Service. I am very fortunate that so far Jasmine, my boss, has been very kind in taking care of that. So if I've left anybody out, I severely apologize, and your donations are much appreciated. The funding and the donation funds will go towards projects and program assistance. I'm currently looking for grants and donations for future projects that help with the projects as well as travel. Just to clarify, the Montana Department of Agriculture pays for overhead. So my salary and office supplies and that kind of stuff is graciously housed by the Montana Department of Ag. That kind of concludes my little feedback and my tidbits about the Montana Invasive Species Education Program. It is a work in progress. It is a program developed to help other professionals, other people, Montana citizens, for us all to become, these invasive species aware, trying to make it common knowledge for us all to help protect our state. So I thank Josh again for having me. And if we have any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can email me at a later date.
Thank you, Megan. I don't see any questions. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and hopefully getting on the same, get all of us on the same page. And thanks for all of you that we work with. It's sometimes I wish I could be out there more doing it. And well, every day I wish I could be out there more doing it, but less in the office, but we all are in the office in the winter. So anyway, thank you, and reach out to any of us here at Department of Ag and the weed program. We're all passionate about what we do and we enjoy working with you. So thanks.